just you get to choose. Right? Like here's the scenario. The environment gives us something which can be perceived as negative, can be perceived as not working, can be perceived as problematic. The world's ending. But we get to choose to see it like that, or we get to choose to see it as an opportunity.
So clearly that it's my responsibility now to do that for other people. If I have information and, other people's success is my success and vice versa.
Because you know what? Like, the challenges or the roadblocks are the journey themselves.
There's no big things. It's all little things compounding on top of each other. And we are back. Another episode of the Pro Advisor Coach podcast. Coach, happy Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. What are you giving thanks for today?
It's funny you asked that. I think it's kind of cool. We have a holiday that tells us what to do. Thanksgiving. We give thanks. Right. And I also noticed that that's an interesting way to put it. Like sometimes we receive thanks, but we want to give it. Like we're giving thanks to things that we're grateful for, I think is usually how I think about that. It's funny, we have a holiday around, there's history and background and about what happened and why we celebrate this holiday. It's also something great to practice all the time, like being grateful for things. And I'm just curious, is that something that's in your regular practice? Do you remember that this is something good that you should get back to? Is it something you did a while ago and don't do anymore? Like, how do you think about giving thanks and showing gratitude?
Yeah, there's a lot of overlaps of how we might call that, being thankful, giving thanks, showing gratitude, I also think it's the same as being in the moment, being present, taking stock, giving you the right context, framing things well. I think all of those things serve in terms of giving you the most utility in the moment and allowing you to be the best version of yourself. So I think there's lots of different ways that shows up. It's like meditating and meditative experiences. It's like if you may not meditate, but you can still have meditative experiences that serve in the same way, which I find very interesting. I was talking to someone last week about massage, and I remember I never used to get massages, and then when I moved to the Philippines, it was really cheap to get them, and I was like, everyone else seems to really like these things, and it doesn't feel good to me, so I'll try them out. But what I found was I used to have them after a workout on a Friday night, and I used to go into the gym right where I lived, and the spa was in the gym, and I'd start my workout. Before I start my workout, I'd just say, in an hour I want to do massage, because I just book it right there on the spot, and then just go crazy in my workout. And the workout itself, I'll be thinking about the physical of it, but I'd have my training diary, and in the front I'd be writing down my sets and reps, but in the back I'd be using it more of a journal or a diary, writing down some of my thoughts as I was training. And then it wasn't time where I was listening to music or anything like that. Maybe I was, but it wasn't there to listen to music. I certainly wasn't listening to podcasts or books then. And so that experience itself was meditative. And then I would go to a massage, and I would find that in that hour that I'm getting pulled around and stood on or whatever, and I would find that my mind would just be going everywhere. And so if your body is active and has its attention on something, then your mind could be free to unwind itself from the spaghetti that's in our head. And I always found myself coming out of those massages thinking, I just figured some stuff out. Things seem to be a bit clearer, right? Just the unwinding of all that, of what's in there. So yeah, I think about all those things together, and I think certain things work for me sometimes, and they run out somehow, and then come back to utilizing them again, and then realize wow, that was great. Why did I ever stop doing that? And then onwards and likewise. So just different tools in the toolbox, different times. But so I think just right now it's helpful to think about it, right? It's cool, experiencing Thanksgiving, and it still feels like a new thing to me, even though this is probably my 10th or 11th Thanksgiving
Mm.
for a start. But like what it means to me, and like is not a tradition I've had since I was a child, but like to create that history now in the last 10 years. That's cool.
I was wondering how you were tying in massaging and what you were mentioning there, but I think the point you were making was getting back to things that work, things that are useful to you. I'm wondering, um, because you've had relative to your life, it's a small percentage of time that you've even experienced Thanksgiving. How has it changed or grown, or how has the way that you operate on, like, how do you think of Thanksgiving now? 11, how many years did you say? 11 years in, 12?
11, I think this will be 11. I think this is 11. Yeah, very aware of like how important holidays are in America, and how like the cycle of the year is driven by holidays a lot. And
Hmm.
like there's no holiday season in England. It's just that it's Christmas, and the Christmas time is like a few weeks before Christmas, and then that's that. Whereas here, it's the season is like a
Commercial.
whole quarter. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, Halloween to Thanksgiving to Christmas is just like 3 months of like put some lights up. Um, like I get the differences. Like I like doing run on a Thanksgiving mornings. That's cool. I like to do that. Like that's something
Mm.
that's a tradition. I like. It's funny. Like I do most of the cooking in our house, but except for the holidays, where Christine does most of the cooking. She does all the important
Mm.
stuff. So yeah, like little things like that. I suppose was cool. And then seeing the girls grow up through it, it's intriguing. I think either way, it's good time to reflect and like. I do think it's important to be able to have a specific time, which is pre-agreed upon. It's like this is what we do at this time. You do it how
Mm.
you want to do it, but this is what we do, or more specifically, this is what we don't do. We're off. We're not working on these days.
Mm.
Different perspective.
Yeah. Um, I wrote down things just seem to slow down a little bit finally,
Mm,
and it's kind of like where you were going with massage. Like we can implement things in our day or week or whatever to like slow down. And I thought it was cool about what you shared. Like I figured things out. It's crazy. Like we remember, sometimes we think that we're thought producers, and to a certain level we are, but I think we're thought receivers. And when we quiet our brains, yeah, I love the quote. Like the brain is the only thing that when you turn it off, it starts working. So like massage, you're not thinking about doing anything. You don't have any tasks to do. You literally cannot get up from the table because somebody's standing on you. If you're Coach Nick, so you just sit there, right? You just be with your thoughts, and I think it's kind of cool because there's a progression. Maybe the things you think about, or even the frequency at which thoughts come to you, is so vastly different at the end versus the beginning when you go to relax and lay down there. Um, but yeah, the time to slow down, I think, to be present with family, that was part of your definition that I really enjoyed. It's like just to be present with what's going on. The holidays, at least to me in America, are like a time to remember what's important and to spend time with those that you love. And especially me being away, I live 3, 4, 5 states away from my family. And I intentionally schedule extra time in addition to the days that the holidays fall on, but more like that week or even 2 weeks to just be with them and to slow down. And I don't know. I think appreciation kind of gets tied to that. Like when you slow down, you notice what you appreciate. It's hard to appreciate things when things are going fast. And so this time of year, I covet. I really appreciate that time. It's funny because when it's done, I'm ready to be done with it and like get back to work
right.
and to work hard. But I think it's kind of like that slingshot or catapult effect to where like you really intentional about slowing down and then it naturally progresses into the next season or the stage to like get back after it after that.
And to not give it an expectation, I think it's important as well.
Mm.
I want to make sure we maximize the time to get all this stuff like done and like just enjoy the time and spend it and be present. Not to say you shouldn't have some sort of schedule or idea or what you might want to do, but just to know that that's not the point. because if you're having to force that scheduling, it probably means you're not going to enjoy it and not appreciate it because you're just trying to force it in. Like it's the difference between being physically present versus mentally present.
Mm.
It's like I remember a few weeks back, I went to a school thing for my eldest, and it was like at 3:30, 3 or 3:30 in the afternoon, and it's like, yep, it's on my calendar. I'm definitely going to go to that. And it's like, that's cool. Like I can go to something that's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I did. I went there, but it was a rush because my wife was waiting downstairs outside. And then so I'm like, okay, you ready? He's like, yeah, ready. Rush downstairs and then like drive to school. Are we late? Like, are we on time? And you get there, and the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm just going, and then the day's washing over me because I've just come from like, I don't know, 4 or 5 back-to-back clients.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I'm physically there, but I'm not the dads that's asking questions about why they're doing that or what does that mean in context for this. And I'm just essentially using it as time just to unwind.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
and that's not the point. So I suppose what I'm saying with that is, I'm back to my three levels of energy. If you're in that space, you need to have the rest before you can have the reflection and appreciation time. If you're trying to force in scheduling stuff, it probably means you haven't had enough rest time first in order that you can enjoy the time. It's like if you can't enjoy the whole experience of it, then it's just not going to be as valuable. You might be physically there, but that's why it's important to make sure you give yourself the space, even if you think you don't need it.
Is there also something to the fact that everyone around you, around us, does the same thing? Like that's a deal with, like, if I want to be intentional about taking rest or having time for myself in September, for example. There's a holiday in September, Labor Day, but like I want to do that. I'm on my own, right? It's like something I have to do. As we know, the environment influences us. So if we know that Thanksgiving's coming, and everybody takes that day off, right? It literally is a national holiday, and so is I think Friday is mostly a holiday for most people. Is there something to that with, like, well, everybody else, like, this is what's being done on this day, so therefore I feel safe enough to immerse myself um, in like the resting part of that.
I think so. Yeah, it's easier to. I mean, just from a practicality standpoint, from a business or a work standpoint, it's Thanksgiving week. People are going to be much more lenient, maybe not the right word, open and flexible to doing it the week after.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's easier to make those decisions, I think. But I think where you're getting to is that it should be you create the environment that you need for success. One of the things I want to do next year is to have 6 weeks off, 4 to 6 weeks off in one go in the summer.
It sounds very, very European of you. Isn't that what they do over there?
I don't know. I'm not European. I'm English. Come on. I don't know. It seems to me that if you had 5 days off, but if you had those 5 days, 1 day a week for 5 weeks, the impact would be very different than if you had 5 days off in a row.
Mm.
Just like I might frame it in a client in terms of immersive experience. So we have a Pro coach immersive experience. It's 2 days, really, sometimes even 36 hours. But if you're tight with what you're doing in that, you can get a hell of a lot of things done in that amount of time. But if you go into that back to the point, if you go into that without having the rest, you're not going to appreciate that time. You're not going to get out of it you're not going to get out of it because you won't be able to put in the things that you need. But yeah, if you want to learn quickly and get a lot of output, you compress the time together. You do it all at once. So it seems like to me that would be a different way of thinking about it as well, right? So I wonder if I had 6 weeks off, like where I could get to in terms of my
Mm.
level of clarity when coming back. And so could that 6 weeks off equal? I mean, you can't make I can't make an equivalent. So I was going to say like if it's going to give me like 12 weeks back of actual productivity time, it's like you can't make that distinction because like you can't just keep going. You have to have a rest at some point.
Mm.
It's probably the biggest theme for me this year is just like do less to do more.
Mm.
I still keep getting hung up with it every day.
Yeah.
That damn Max Feel line.
Yeah, I feel that too because it's counterintuitive to just talking about this earlier. Some people describe it as like the unconscious mind, right? Like we know what to do, but unless we actually really believe it at an unconscious level, we'll keep referring back to our belief systems. Our belief systems, at least one deeply rooted one that I had, is the harder I work, the more money I make, right? I gotta increase my commitments to make more value, and just playing with that. Like, is that actually true, or is that just something I believe in? And only recently am I practicing more discipline with who I'm letting into my schedule. Just the fact that I block off time, and it's counterintuitive, right? Because it's like, oh, there's space here. How is that going to grow my business? And I'm inevitably, and we know this, right? Whenever we reach that step and we plateau a little bit, the next step up is always uncomfortable. It's just this one is uncomfortable in a different way. The
That's right.
uncomfortability has been in terms of like growth, right? Like, oh, it's stretching me, it's stretching me. But now the stretch is like less stretching. It doesn't make any sense. The stretch is less stretching. So I actually feel stretched to schedule less things in my schedule. That's true. That's the way that I feel, and I'm letting it be okay to live in that space, just like I let it be okay to live in the space of, well, I feel stretched with more in my schedule, because that was a thing at one point too.
Yeah, I had a coach who was coaching me once. Uh, share that same thing with me because I was like, I want to go faster here. Like I can't do anything right now because I'm hampered by this. I was in a transition period, I suppose, and I was like, I can see it. I want to go. I want to go do it. I want to go stretch. Yeah, and it's exactly what you said. You just said maybe the stretch right now is the fact that you can't stretch.
Mm.
Ah, damn.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I made note when you said, right, because I've been trying to figure out the right way to frame this and something I want to come back to. You said the harder I work, the more money I make, and as a belief. And so then we're saying that it's essentially the opposite. Stop trying to cram more into less time. If you do that, your money will go down. It will go
Mm.
the other way. And um, jump into something else. A book I just finished was 10x easier than 2x, and a piece of that at the end he talks about like the different types of days, and it aligns with the energy we've been talking about earlier. Those three levels of energy, and he thinks about it in terms of days where you work. Right, so if you've got an execution day, so my foot, the car's on the road, you're doing the execution, you're driving. You can't also have things in that day that are reflection things
Mm.
because they're different activities.
Mm.
It takes. I mean, how much would it? I mean, you're driving along, you're doing 2 hours driving, and you stop, pull over, and then you go. Now you got to do an hour of reflection. Like you're barely going to get into any reflection before you got to get back on the road again, and then you're like, all right, back on the road again. Like where was I? Like what? Like it's going to take you long to get into that you might have a crash because you're not focused. It's like spend one day driving and spend another day. It's like, okay, I'm going to spend a day driving to the mountains. When I get to the mountains, I'm going to spend the next day in the cabin looking outside and writing things. I'm not going to stop off on the way up there just to write bits and pieces in my journal on my driveway on the drive up there. So really segregate those days in order to be able to get the proper lift that you need to this type of activity that you're doing. And so changing So stop working hard. Anyway, and then it starts talking about like the free days that you have. So there's the days where you just don't do any work outside of the weekends. Just like it's just anything but, because it gives you more when you come back to work.
Mm.
And the quote was, and they were very deliberate. It said, "If you double your free days, you'll double your income."
Mm. That's crazy.
It's
That's probably true.
crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. So that's like, I get it, but that's the most challenging piece.
Yeah.
And for people that I'm working with, like that's the same observation, right? And so, how can we normalize working less?
Yeah.
Because the automatic assumption is that I'm 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 being lazy, or why would I work less? I could do more. But it's not about working less. It's not just taking the activities you're doing and just doing less of them. It's creating the space such that you can understand where your most valuable activities, your leverage activities are, and then do those. And they take much less time, but create way more leverage. And then you need the leftover time to make sure that when you do work in that 20% space again, it's the right activities.
Yep.
I feel like at the
I'm
moment all roads are leading back to this conversation.
mm.
But perhaps in your statement, like the harder I work, the more money I make. Maybe it's not changing that belief as much as it might be changing the way that we think about the word harder. What does harder mean? Play with that, coach, if you would. Like, what in that first belief you had, the harder I work, the more money I make. What does harder mean?
Harder can mean probably two definitions. One would be more. So like if I have X number of clients, I have Y number of clients now. Like growing the number of clients. Um,
But that's an
I think that's
outcome.
I think that's the main definition. What's that?
All right.
Yeah, but I think that's what I'm thinking when I think harder. Like
Okay.
harder means more. Like I don't think I would do anything
Right.
differently with the ones that I have. That would have been my second definition. Is like I don't even know how I would describe that. Like what would I do differently? Like we're on Zoom, right? We're not like manual labor. Like I can't produce more units of mining coal, for example. I can't work harder that way. So I
But
think
it's more though, right? Yeah, I think that's it. I think you just
yeah,
nailed it. It's
more.
more of every. It's just more of what you're doing already.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
If I work for 10 hours and I make X dollars, I work for 20 hours, I can make X dollars. Like I can
right.
do more. I'm mining coal if I work more. If I physically go harder, if I do like I'm done doing two things at once. Yeah, maybe we couldn't do that on Zoom, but yeah, like or back to back rather than like breaks in between. Right, just
Mm.
squish more into less time. Switch more things into the same amount of time or less time, or more, or double time and double output. Right, it's like, oh, I'm only working 5 hours a day. If I work 10 hours a day, I could do twice as many. So yeah, more. So what could it mean instead? What's the antithesis of that? Like, what's the thing that actually it needs to be the meaning of harder, such that you can break through to that next level?
So we're asking to redefine harder, or
Yeah.
I would just replace it with an entirely new belief system.
Okay. I'm playing around with it to kind of get to that point, indeed. But if you can
Yeah,
go straight there,
yeah. I think the instead of the harder I work, the more money I make. It would be the more strategy time I have to optimize my business, the more money I make, or the more impact I make. Well, whatever that finishing definition is. And we're getting to this point, and maybe this is too early to insert this into the conversation, but I'll introduce it now. I'm reading a book that I think maybe you either are familiar with or have read. What to Say When Talking to Yourself. Have you heard of that?
yeah, I am familiar. Have not read.
Helmstetter is the author, and it's kind of the concept of the subconscious mind that I keep going back to. So
Yeah.
what I've begun doing from this book is practicing self-talk, like the
Yeah.
communication with ourselves. So I'm recording voice memos of the belief systems that I are more empowering for me, putting them in the present tense. I do this, I am this, I practice this. And it's more along the lines of what I just stated there versus, not the working harder one, but the more strategy I implement in my schedule, the more money I make, the more impact I make. And I'm filling up my voice memos with things that I want to be reminded of. So it's now my nightly routine and my morning routine to listen to things that I'm saying to myself it's kind of like the massaging thing. I'm like, why did I get away from that? Well, this is my hacking the system with, I don't want to get away from these things. I want to be constantly reminded of them so that so that my subconscious mind like believes in them now. And it's just the way that I operate.
I spent a lot of time in that space of I wouldn't even say things out loud, even as examples, because I know going into subconscious. Lots of practice, and I'd catch myself often saying things to myself and just like overriding them immediately. So that's not necessarily the right practice, but that's my version of it right now.
Mm.
Like what? And just making it silly. Like what are you talking about? That's not true. I'm having that conversation with myself. But I have that book on my Audible that apparently I already purchased it. I haven't listened to it yet.
Yeah.
So maybe we did talk about it. All right, Coach. Put it together for me on this Thanksgiving Day, if you would.
Yeah. I think in a way, this podcast is a hack, and that it accomplishes both things. This is like us working harder, but it's also the strategy time for us to like work through and make sense of that. So that's what, talk about gratitude and appreciating things. That's what I appreciate about, oh my gosh, episode 170 something now. Something must be good about this, that we've made this commitment for over 3 years now. And then just constant reminders. Like, I feel like this is almost an accelerator episode of, it's about growing our businesses in a different way. And I'm sure listeners can take something from our conversation, apply it to whatever they're going through. But it's like a different way to think about things. It's like we're stepping outside of the box. We already do that just by having an episode for the past 170, but this feels a little bit different in a way that we're approaching things that it feels like a bit courageous. There's not the guarantee. This is completely flipped from the belief systems that we normally operate from. And something great's going to happen. Like, I can feel it. There's an energy flowing through it. More of the way I want to live, more of the way I want to operate, more of the way that I want to coach, separate from the box that I thought it might have been or might have looked like when I first started.
There's definitely something I'm on the edge of right now. I may be already over the edge, but certainly close. Just really to be, as you say, just internalizing that space that I think it depends where you are in your journey, but essentially, as soon as you can realize that it's a focus of having enough space such that the things that you are doing, you know that they're your most leveraged activities. That's it.
Mm.
But it's easy to get out of that.
Yeah. And I would like to share, I'm going to hijack your takeaway here, if that's okay.
Go for
it. Something that I just started last week. I've shared before that I have my checklist of like, I write out the days of the week and I write down my tasks and responsibilities. I don't do that anymore. I've been doing that for like 3 years, and I've altered what I do. Now, what I do is, what are the game-changing actions that I can complete this week? And it's less things. It's like 5 things, 3 things. And it's not about checking the box and doing the task. And like, I realized it was a catch-all for things I didn't want to forget.
Yeah.
But there were things that made such a minimal impact. It was like, why am I wasting my time remembering the things that, sure, I want to get them done, but I don't think it really affected how much I converted on them. Like, I was going to do it anyway. I actually need to be reminded of the 20% of things that I sometimes get lost in the shuffle when I'm focused on all these other tasks here. So that's a change that I just recently implemented that is in alignment with this conversation today and your takeaway.
Yeah, because you can easily conflate those two, right? It's like, doesn't mean you shouldn't capture them or do them, but they don't hold the same weight. Yeah. Good stuff, Coach. Good stuff, Coach. Enjoy.
Appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you for watching another episode of Truth Seekers. We appreciate your interaction, so please comment, like, subscribe to YouTube, Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want more, check out some of our links. Links to our masterclass, The Achiever's Mindset, and come join our LinkedIn group. And what do you want to see more of? Remember, we're here to share the simple secrets of successful. So help us do that. What do you want to see? What do you want to see more of? Thanks, and see you again next time.